go to the dentist and get all your teeth pulled out with no anesthesia, then don't write. But maybe you talk well. Maybe it's easy for you to get jazzed up about writing something, Cheri, or doing technology stuff, Richard. But when you talk about it, you get excited. And then you aren't worried about, am I writing for social media? And what about content strategy? And, oh, my gosh, what about Instagram with pictures?
Mm-hmm.
Start where you are. Start with what you know.
You know, that makes so much sense, Mama Red. We had a client, or have a client. She writes music. She was struggling with posting on social media. And we finally were able to help her realize that she's a beautiful composer. So start composing your posts.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like this aha. And all of a sudden, she sat down. Her homework assignment was to sit down and start writing and composing, composing musical posts.
Yep.
And then that's the posting she was going to be putting on her social media site. What a difference, because she didn't think of it as writing post content. She started writing music.
Exactly.
So that makes so much sense.
And the thing that's funny is, for me, getting to the visual stuff, and I've had a lot of compliments in the recent, let's say a year, about the visuals on my stuff. And I kind of laugh because I had nothing, no clue how to do visual stuff. I came from a background of writing instructions and doing flow diagrams and what we now call screencasts. They were screenshots, that you were saying type A, press B. So the first time I sat down to write a blog post, I typed 90 words a minute, and I couldn't type. It was like my fingers were frozen over the keyboard, shaking. Because what was I going to write? I had not written in my own voice, in my own way, ever. Between school, where they told you what you had to write, and the corporate world in which I lived, where they told me I had to use prerequisites, I didn't have a voice. I had no voice that was mine. And then I spent, 3 years listening to all the big internet marketing gurus about what you had to do, and every time I would sit down, I would freeze. And nobody said to me, Mama Red, you have this ability to talk that you just flow. And Richard, I thank you so very much for what you said, because that means the world to me, because that's who I am, or who I strive to be, and yet I couldn't find a way to do this. And yet I would do a call, let's say like this, and I was at home. But because I grew up being told I talk too much, it never occurred to me to talk my message.
Oh, I love that. So you kind of learned that through finding your voice.
Exactly. And because I was so terrified, and this is something I think happens with others different ways, but I'll share this with people so that they understand they're not alone. My script said I was a bad girl because I talked too much. And yet there are people who would rather do anything but do what I'm doing right now with you. For me, this is pure joy. I love doing this. And yet I didn't think it was okay, because I read somewhere you had to write a book, and then somebody else said you had to, do social media till your fingers fell off and your eyeballs fell out. And finding the way that works for you, like your client who is composing her posts. There are people for whom writing is a natural. There are others for whom it's hell on earth for them to do that. So what I ask you to do, is you two personally, and those of you who are listening, what's comfortable for you? Start there. Pretty please, with sugar on it. Because if you love pictures, start there. If you're a photographer, gosh, you're blessed beyond words. I can't do anything but take a picture of my thumbnail. I swear, every time I take a picture of that instead of the picture. So if you're a photographer,
I'm with you on that one. I got
oh my gosh, you too, Richard? Really?
I'm always on him. I take all these pictures of him, and I'll ask him to take one picture of me, and it's blurred. What?
Oh, good. Richard, I've got it. I know why. It's because our brain is in that techie strategy, and we're not into that thing, right? Right? Say yes, Richard.
Yes,
Mama Red.
Speaking of technology, for those that are wanting to start creating their content, what are the right technology? How do you pick the right technology, I guess? Are there certain tools that you recommend that they get started on?
Let's talk about that. This is another one of those. I'm doing my best to behave and be a good girl, because I can get on a rant that would last about 180 years about the right technology and stuff, because there is no such thing. Rephrase. There is no one such thing. And if I can take the thing about pictures just one more step, because this is another one that I think frightens people. It's like, well, I don't know how to manipulate graphics, and I don't take good pictures, and they're too expensive if I want to buy them. And there's this whole set of things, and I've spent 6.5, 7 years wishing what I know now, I could go back about 5 years, because, first of all, there's a massive amount of free tools out there. But I ask you to consider, when those people put those tools out for you, give them something back. Give them a link, something. Because we all need to make a living. And, Richard, you talked about it at the beginning with the profits. We all need them, and we all get excited about free toys, or free tools, but they got to make a living too. So keep that in mind. At least do a link. But what you need to do when you're thinking about the technology is back up and, once again, set it aside. It's not about the technology. The technology is supposed to be your slave. You're not supposed to be its. And
very
so often people...
There.
Say again?
That's very insightful.
Thank you. And I've been around it since the 80s, and believe me, it's so many companies, and I don't care whether you're a one-person startup or a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 500. What I see being done wrong, and it grieves my heart, is people go, now, Cheri, what are you using to create polls for Facebook? And Cheri says, well, I don't do that. Richard does. So we went over to Richard and go, Richard, what are you using to create posts for social media? I need to know what tool to get.
I just sit down and open up my microphone and just start talking. And whatever comes out becomes my post.
Really? So you're doing audio posts, are you?
He does.
I'll transcribe them. I'll send them off to Fiverr. Somebody will transcribe it for $5. So I don't really care.
I want you to repeat that, would you, for me?
Yes,
because you
definitely.
just said something hugely important.
I speak, a lot of times I just speak it into my smartphone. I just hit record and let it go. And then when I'm done, I download it. I send it over to Fiverr. There's this lady I use, and she transcribes it.
And Fiverr
there you go.
Fiverr is www.fivrr. That's .com.
And it's a team that pretty much they all work for like $5 approximately for project, but it depends on the project. I know some of the things you do for transcribing cost a little more sometimes.
Well, when we do our profits training, the 1 hour for the profits training costs me about $30 to $35 to transcribe.
Exactly.
In the print form, edited, all the ums and ahs are taken out of it, and I get a Word doc back.
But, Mama Red, when he said that is exactly what he does. When he has thoughts in his mind, he realizes that he can't write them down.
I can't write them fast enough. By the time I write them, I forget about them.
Yeah,
exactly. They've gone whizzing down the street. And the reason I asked you to repeat that is I want our listeners to understand that's a wonderfully perfect way to balance what you're good at and what you do well and easily, and then have somebody else take care of the transcription, for example.
Perfect.
So
Perfect.
The right answer to what technology is what do you need?
Mm-hmm.
The second right answer is what is your current skill level? So I'll be on these different Facebook groups, and I tend to hang out there a little less than I used to now. But it would be, what do you use for a CRM? What do you use to create images? What do you use? And my first answer is, what are your requirements?
Mm-hmm.
Because what people do, it's kind of like, well, where do you want to go to eat? I don't know. What are you hungry for? Well, golly gee, today.
Get more specific on the question.
Exactly. And so what you need to do is pretend that you have no choices at the moment. And sit down and think, what do I need to do? And then, am I a technophobe, or does it geek me out to really, go out and play with software? And that was something I didn't realize. I denied my inner geekette because I thought that was just like really boring. And who wants to talk to, a woman who can geek out on finding 22 mind mapping tools in an afternoon? Which I did, by the way.
I'd gladly have that off to you, Mama Red.
And what I find is I love doing that. And I just spent some time last week analyzing and evaluating tools for a guy who needs a scheduling tool. Now, there are tons and tons of scheduling tools out there.
Yes, there are. We just went through that whole research
ourselves. What he needs is very specific, and what he was looking at getting it wouldn't work. So what I want you to think about is, what do you want to do? And I'm going to give you a couple ideas that are about the least technologically intense that I know of. How's that?
Sounds great.
Is that fair?
I think the audience would go for that.
Okay. I have got thousands of dollars worth of tools, both paid and free, that I have used and played with and experimented with, and it's come down to two basic tools when it comes to creating visual posts. Mm-hmm. One is a tool called Canva, CANV as in victory, .com. They have made it about as simple as it can. Now, you got to understand, folks, there's a language that comes with visualizing things, just like there's a language that comes with whatever you do. So know that there's going to be some frustration. But of the tools that I have taught clients, helped with, that is probably one of the simplest. And the greatest part about it is it's free.
I know.
And they have, well, let me put a teensy little caveat. It is free if you bring in your own images or use some of their free ones, and it's only $1 per image if you want to use one of theirs. And I got to tell you, don't do the stupid thing I did. The stupid thing I did was like, I'm not going to pay $1 for their images. I'm going to go find my own. Thank you very much. And about 10, 12 hours later, I finally had an image that I liked. I think I would have been better off paying the buck.
Yes, definitely. I do that when I use my email marketing tool, Constant Contact. If I find an image in there and it's not a free image, I will pay the money. Sometimes
and get her over with.
Yeah, because
here's the formula. What is your hour worth that you might spend, or in my case, that 10? True confessions of the blushing redhead.
Well, time is worth a lot more. You have to know what your time is worth for you. What you value yourself at. So it is definitely worth it to take that time and alleviate it and do something different. Pay for it. Or I know there are some free imaging tools out there as well. I'm not sure if you know of any of those, but there are some out there. Would
imaging, as in, give me a description.
To go out and get free images that you can use online.
Well, I'll tell you what. Would you like to offer your guests a gift?
Yes.
Now, I don't have any fancy-dancy pages and everything, but I have a guide that has 10 sites on it where you can go and get images that are free to download and they're free for commercial use. And I would be happy to give it to anyone who sends an email to me and asks for it.
Definitely. Let's go ahead and get that out there, and I'll make sure I post it on the Social Radio Show page as well. So what is your email that they can email to get this? It's a white paper with 10 sites